So, SilverStone, Computex, you saw some cases. This is the first, the Micro ATX. This thing has 8 3.5-inch hot swap bays at the front, ready to go. I'm using this in an AM5 system. This would be an excellent, the Epic 4004 series, Epic for the AM5 socket. This would be great. This would be great for the Zen 5 platform for AM5 that's coming out. I've got a 7900 no X in here, 65 watt. This thing at the wall idles like 20 watts, and 10 of those watts is the out-of-band management. Very, very low power idle before you add drives and other connectivity. And look at all this room on the inside for activities. This is your 8 3.5-inch bays. You can take out 5 screws and it'll slide out. You can get your Micro ATX motherboard in here. There's a lot to like about this case. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with a build and an unboxing, and then you'll see how I got here. I love this. SilverStone is doing some really killer stuff for workstations and the home lab. Let's dive in. This is the SilverStone CS382. It is indeed the CS382. Saw this at Computex, requested it, they sent it, and this might be the ultimate Micro ATX home server case chassis thingy. Let's unbox. Look at this glory. Ooh, look at the manual. 8-bay SAS12G/SATA 6G hot swappable high performance NAS chassis. Yes. Tell me more. This is a chassis that features 5.25-inch bays. How exciting is that? At the rear, it's also 5 slots. 5 slots. Now, it might look a little weird. It might look like it's an upside down case. The motherboard does mount upside down, but you've got this over here. This is where most of your cost comes from. This is your 8 hot swap bays with 8 individual SATA connections, or SAS connections, SAS 12G. Also, it has Molex or SATA style power connectors, and then there's 2 cooling fans just for that. The front is easily removable. There's a little slidey-go latch thingy to make it easy to take off the front, and then it's got a dust filter, so you can clean the dust filter on the front. And this is your drive sled. It'll hold toollessly a 3.5-inch mechanical hard drive, or you can mount a 2.5-inch SSD in there. You've got a full 5.25-inch bay at the front, as well as, is that an optical drive? Yes, you could put an optical drive there. Now, while this case does have a 9.5mm optical bay, meaning that, okay, so this is a 10.5, not gonna work, but the slim 9.5mm will work. So if you wanted to have a DVD burner or a DVD reader, archiving, backup, whatever, you could put that in this chassis, and that would work. And it wouldn't take up your 5.25-inch bay, which is awesome. There's room for a full-size ATX power supply, although I'll probably be adding the Cooler Master SFX small form factor power supply. Now, on the back of the motherboard tray, it looks like you got plenty of mounting options. If you get creative, you can mount some stuff here. You got 2 2.5-inch bays for mounting here. You can put a smaller power supply in and have lots of room that way. You got a 3.5-inch mechanical bay at the bottom here, so you can have a permanent operating system mechanical hard drive. There's a dust filter at the bottom for the power supply, so you can have your power supply have its own separate intake, which is a nice feature. You got front panel Type-C, as well as 2 5-gigabit ports, front panel audio. Now, I mentioned this thing has 5 slots. What motherboard has 5 slots? Well, that's not how you use it. We're gonna go for AM5, obviously, for my example motherboard. And this is not the best example. If the bottom slot here were X8 or X16, you can have a GPU that hangs off the end of the motherboard. And so that will give you 3 usable slots, plus 2 slots to use for your GPU. So having the 5th extra slot is pretty awesome. Now, as this is, you could run an extension ribbon cable or something like that to your bottom 2 slots so that you're not blocking, some of your configuration. But for this motherboard layout, it actually works out okay for us, because I've got 2 slots here to use for this. Now, this thing also only has 4 built-in SATA ports, and they're SATA, they're not SAS, so I'm gonna need to use a SAS controller with this. This motherboard also has dual built-in 10 gigabit, which is nice, but if I were gonna go higher end, I could put a 25 gigabit controller in this. And the fact that this thing will hold, 8 20 plus terabyte hard drives, 160 terabytes of online raw storage in this tiny little case, pretty awesome. The case has a few flaws, one of which is our doesn't quite fit. I mean, you can make it fit, but you're gonna have to take out a lot of screws, and it's just a hair too big, but otherwise it's almost perfect. This case also has some more clever options, but also some annoying ones. So if you have a GPU like this, it will actually fit in this case. You can pop out the 5 1/4 inch mounting. It's pretty clever, right? You can also mechanically mount the GPU, which makes it shipping safe, which is pretty awesome. But if you have a GPU that has flow through like this, it's blocked by the drive bays. This case also supports a 240 or 280 millimeter AIO. Again, that's an option. If you're gonna build this as like a 10-year server option, AIOs in general, is there a 10-year AIO option? Silverstone has a few that they promise will be truly excellent. I'm gonna try the Deepcool AS500. Deepcool just went on the State Department naughty list. If you're a subscriber on Patreon or Floatplane, I actually had some pretty cool Deepcool testing for AM5 in general, desktops, etc. Pretty good coolers. One other reason you might wanna not go for the normal tower cooler, maybe something a little high-end, Noctua is what I have in mind specifically, is if you do get a server motherboard, be aware that the socket is rotated 90 degrees. It is a different socket orientation. This is not the same socket orientation that you're used to. The tower cooler will mount like this with the normal default mounting options. Now, Noctua, depending on the cooler, may or may not come with the right angle mounting kit. I've got an old NM AM4 mounting kit, which gives you the short and the long brackets. I just happen to have that. That will work for one of the Noctua small profile coolers. And then I have front to back airflow, even though my socket on this board is rotated 90 degrees. If you don't go for a server motherboard, you're not gonna have an issue. It's time for the IC dock. Wait, you can put that there? Segue. Got some IC dock stuff I wanna show you because you can get really creative with this. All right, first up, the least expensive option. This is the MB024SP-B. This is really underrated. It's 4 SATA connections in the back. It's this little carrier. You can almost 3D print one of these if it weren't for the cool electronics in it. Here's a SATA drive. Look how cool this is. Boom. It's kind of sort of hot swap. Toolless, trayless. Guess what? This will go fine in our front 5 1/4 inch drive bay. You mount that there and boom, you can remove this. Now you can also recess it. The screw holes line up there. It's a little harder to grab the drive, but the front will close in this configuration. If this is too pedestrian, I assure you IC Dock has some upgrades that will tickle your fancy. Maybe this? This is 4 PCIe Gen 4 U.2 and a carrier like this. I got our Kioxia 12.5 millimeter U.2. It's the tall variety of U.2. Basically just comes down to what you want in terms of height. Boom. You got 4 U.2 connections. And those 4 U.2 can go to this single X16 slot. If SATA will get it done for you, there is the express cage. It's 8 2.5 inch SAS/SATA bays made for a 5 1/4 inch bay. This is the MB038SP-B. This in there, this will give you 8 2.5 inch drives. That's up to 7 millimeters in height. I actually have the triple 5 1/4 inch bay version of this in another one of our systems because IC Dock is so hot. See what I did there? IC Dock hot. They also have accessories like this one for the 3.5 inch bay. So even though this 3.5 inch bay on the bottom is somewhat inaccessible, it is possible to mount this in there, and then you have a bay that will hold a U.2. Now you do have to take the side off to get to it, but it does become removable and hot swappable with an eject button. IC Dock's got one other cheat code, which is perfect for this motherboard with this PCIe layout. And that is the Tough Armor U.2/U.3 SSD mobile rack for PCIe expansion slot. Now this one will only work with U.2 and U.3 up to 9.5 millimeter, not 12.5 millimeter. But this is a PCIe card with a bay at the back. And so you can mount your U.2 on this and it becomes externally accessible. Now we've got another U.2 bay. And we're not even wasting any PCIe lanes because this is in an X4 slot. We still got our X16 slot free, which could go to a PCIe card or a breakout card for U.2 connections in the front, or whatever it is that we want to do. ICDock has a lot of cheat codes for doing a lot of different things, and just because you don't necessarily have an externally accessible 3.5-inch bay or 5.25-inch bay doesn't mean you can't mount it in your case anyway. I've certainly mounted ICDock stuff like in the bottom of my case, or in, you know, you get the 3.5-inch bays that are like in the bottom around the power supply shroud. You can mount a drive thing there, that's fine. Just pop the side off and get to it. It works. Now, given that I'm going to use relatively slow mechanical hard drives in our 3.5-inch bays, and this motherboard only has 4 onboard SATA, is there a cheat code for that? It turns out there is. This is an M.2 to 5 SATA. More than 2 is available in an M.2 form factor, but don't know that I'd really recommend that. Oh, I'm sorry, this is 6 SATA connections on an M.2. So I could use 4 of these in the 4 on board. That gives me 8. And I have 2 left over, so I could have, you know, random small SSDs floating around in here for the operating system or whatever, because Lord knows there's plenty of room in here. I could just start cramming SSDs in basically anywhere. This does give me some options to be able to do that, which is pretty killer. Oh, and of course, my favorite final ICDock cheat code. There's not a 3.5-inch bay here, but there's enough room. The cables are a little crowded at the back. Would recommend a right angle connector if you go this route, but look at that. I've got some more low profile slots for SATA. Right there. Easily accessible. Yeah, I gotta take the side off in order to get to that, but hey, that's pretty good. This case is ripe for 3D printable accessories like that. Being able to shove drives places they don't belong, being able to mount them in the top if you don't need clearance for your PCIe expansion slots. You have a lot of options for getting creative with this case, and that's why I say for home labbers, I think they'll really like it. But even small, medium-sized business, I think that it goes a long way. I mean, with this platform, look, I've got dual Intel X550 10 gig plus dual 1 gig plus out-of-band management. I can rock up to 16 cores and 192 gigabytes of memory in this platform. Really, like 96 or 128 gigs is what I recommend because of the whole 1 DIMM per channel thing. But this is also an error correcting platform. You don't have to use the fancy server motherboard. There's a lot you can do on this platform to get really creative. If you like this video, you want to see more stuff like this, let me know. Thumbs up, share, comment below, you know, the usual engagement stuff. Hang out in the forums at level 1, touch base. Let me see what kind of stuff you're building, or let me know what I can do with the hardware that I already have to rearrange things and stuff that is interesting and engaging. I don't know. I'm Little, this is level 1. I'm signing out. You can find me in the level 1 forums.